Ma'am, I'm done asking. Step off this property now or you're going in cuffs.
You're standing on federal ground. I'm the site director. Check my credentials.
I don't care who you claim to be. Turn around.
Officer, if you touch me, you're ending.
On a crisp, bright Tuesday morning in October, Thorne received a dispatch call regarding a trespasser at the newly renovated Apex Logistics Hub. The trespasser in question was Dr. Evelyn Vance, a 52-year-old senior executive with the federal government. What Thorne did next, ignoring her position, mocking her authority, and ordering the woman who ran the facility to wait outside like a naughty child, would become a case study in how unchecked arrogance rots the foundation of law enforcement. Before we get into the details, where are you watching from today? If you believe that truth is the only disinfectant that works, please hit that subscribe button. We need your help to keep these stories in the light. The Apex Logistics Hub sits on the industrial fringe of the city, a sprawling complex of glass steel and high-security concrete barriers. It is a critical node in the federal supply chain handling sensitive logistics for the Department of Transportation and the GSA. It is not the kind of place where people wander in by accident. The perimeter is marked by 10-foot fences and signage warning of federal jurisdiction. It was 9:30 a.m. The autumn sun was cutting sharp shadows across the manicured lawn of the facility's entrance. The air was cold, the sky a piercing blue. Dr. Evelyn Vance had arrived at the facility at 8:45 a.m. She had been appointed as the federal site director 3 weeks prior, a role that capped a stellar 28-year career in public administration. Evelyn was a woman of immense gravity. She stood 5'9", wore a tailored navy pantsuit that cost more than Officer Thorne's monthly salary, and carried herself with the quiet, unshakable confidence of a woman who had managed crises in 3 different presidential administrations. She had spent a decade in the Inspector General's office, auditing billion-dollar defense contracts. She had led disaster relief logistics in the Gulf Coast. She was meticulous, fair, and utterly intolerant of incompetence. That morning, Evelyn was conducting an unannounced red team inspection of the facility's external security protocols before her official introduction meeting scheduled for 10:00 a.m. She wanted to see how the contracted security firm handled the perimeter when they didn't know the boss was watching. She parked her sedan in the visitor lot, hung her lanyard around her neck, though the badge was currently tucked into her blazer pocket, and began walking the fence line, taking notes on a digital tablet. She was checking for gaps in the fencing, looking at the camera angles and observing the response time of the gate guards. She looked exactly like what she was, a high-level administrator conducting an audit. But to the eyes of the man watching her from the security booth, she was something else entirely. She was a black woman walking around a high-value target with a tablet, and in his limited worldview that didn't look like leadership. It looked like a threat or perhaps a nuisance, and he was itching for a confrontation. Kyle Braddock was 29 years old and had been the site security manager for exactly 4 months. He was the type of man who treated a private security uniform like it was the armor of a knight. He had applied to the police academy twice and failed the psychological evaluation both times, too aggressive, too prone to impulsive decision-making. Now employed by a private contracting firm to guard the outer perimeter of the Apex Hub, he treated the facility as his personal kingdom. He spent his shifts monitoring the CCTV feeds, desperate to catch someone doing something wrong so he could exert a fraction of the authority he craved. When Braddock saw Dr. Vance walking along the north perimeter, pausing to photograph a rusted hinge on the secondary gate, his mind immediately categorized her. In his experience, the only people who walked around the perimeter were maintenance workers, lost delivery drivers, or people looking to steal copper wire. He didn't see the tailored suit. He didn't see the expensive tablet. He saw a black woman alone, and his bias filled in the rest of the picture. She was probably a disgruntled former employee or a solicitor trying to bypass the front desk. Braddock didn't radio his team. He didn't check the visitor logs. He adjusted his belt, put on his mirrored sunglasses, and marched out of the guard shack to confront her. He walked with a puffed-out chest, closing the distance between them with unnecessary speed. "Hey!" Braddock shouted from 50 feet away. "You stop right there!" Evelyn Vance didn't flinch. She finished typing a note about the rusted hinge, locked her tablet, and turned slowly to face the shouting man. She adjusted her glasses, her expression neutral. She was used to being addressed by senators and generals. The barking of a private security guard barely registered as a disturbance. "Good morning," Evelyn said, her voice calm and measured. "I noticed the secondary gate hinge is corroded. That needs to be logged for maintenance." Braddock stopped 3 feet from her, invading her personal space. "I didn't ask you about the hinge. I asked what you're doing here. This is a restricted federal facility. You can't just wander around playing with your iPad." "I am aware of what facility this is," Evelyn replied, her tone sharpening slightly. "I am the new site director. I'm conducting a perimeter audit." Braddock let out a short, derisive laugh. "Yeah, and I'm the Secretary of Defense. Look, lady, we don't have any site director listed for a walk-around today. You need to get off the property, now." Evelyn sighed, a sound of profound patience wearing thin. She reached for the pocket of her blazer. "If you will allow me to show you my credentials." "Don't reach for anything," Braddock yelled, his hand dropping to the pepper spray on his belt. "Keep your hands where I can see them. You know what, I'm not dealing with this. I'm calling the police. You're trespassing." "Mr. Braddock," Evelyn said, reading his name tag, "I strongly suggest you do not do that. If you call the police, you will be initiating a chain of events that will result in your termination. I am Dr. Evelyn Vance, SES Level 2. Call your supervisor inside. Verify my identity." "I'm not calling anyone except the cops," Braddock sneered. He pulled out his radio, but instead of calling the front desk, he dialed 911 on his personal cell phone, ensuring there would be no internal record of his mistake until it was too late. He reported a hostile trespasser refusing to leave federal property. Dr. Vance watched him, her face unreadable. She didn't argue further. She simply unlocked her tablet and began a new file, incident report, security personnel conduct. She knew the police were coming. She assumed they would be professionals who would rectify the situation. She was wrong. Officer Derek Thorne was only 4 blocks away when the call came in. Disturbance at Apex Hub. Trespasser refusing to leave. Hostile. Thorne's disciplinary record was a minefield of sustained and not sustained complaints. There were 9 total complaints in 6 years. 4 involved rudeness to civilians. 2 involved escalation of force during routine traffic stops. His supervisors knew he was a liability, a hothead, who struggled to de-escalate situations, yet the union contracts and a shortage of patrol officers kept him on the street. Thorne viewed himself as a soldier in a war zone, not a public servant. When he heard hostile trespasser at a federal building, his adrenaline spiked. He didn't picture a grandmother or a bureaucrat. He pictured a threat. He hit his lights and sirens, speeding through the mid-morning traffic, convincing himself he was racing toward a dangerous situation. He pulled his cruiser up to the curb where Braddock was standing guard over Evelyn. Thorne exited the vehicle swiftly, his hand resting on his holster. He saw Braddock, a white male in a uniform, and Evelyn, a black woman, standing calmly with a tablet. In that split second, Thorne's brain made the same catastrophic calculation Braddock's had. Uniform equals good guy. Black woman equals suspect. "What's the problem here?" Thorne demanded, walking past Evelyn to address Braddock first. "Officer, thank God," Braddock said, playing the victim. "She's been loitering on the perimeter. I told her to leave and she started giving me attitude, claiming she runs the place, refuses to ID herself. I think she's casing the building." Thorne turned to Evelyn. He didn't see the expensive suit or the posture of a woman in command. He saw defiance. He saw someone who hadn't immediately cowered when he arrived. "Ma'am, you need to step away from the fence," Thorne barked. Evelyn looked at the officer. She saw the nameplate. Thorne. She noted the aggressive stance, the lack of investigative curiosity. "Officer Thorne, I am Dr. Evelyn Vance. I am the federal site director for this facility. This security guard refused to look at my credentials. I am asking you to look at them now." "I don't care who you say you are," Thorne interrupted, cutting her off with a wave of his hand. "The property manager wants you gone. That means you're trespassing. You need to clear out." "I cannot be trespassing on a facility that I manage," Evelyn stated, her voice icy. "I have my federal PIV card in my pocket. It authorizes me to be here." "It authorizes me to be anywhere in this building. If you arrest me, or if you remove me, you are violating federal law." Thorne stepped closer, invading her personal space just as Braddock had. He hated it when people quoted the law to him. He felt it was a direct challenge to his power. "Listen to me. I'm not going to ask you again. This is private property." "It is federal property," Evelyn corrected him. "It is property you are being told to leave," Thorne shouted. "You are causing a disturbance. You are scaring the employees. Now you can walk away, or you can go for a ride. Which is it?" The standoff had attracted an audience. A crew of construction workers repairing the sidewalk across the street had stopped their jackhammers. Several administrative assistants from the Apex building were watching from the glass lobby doors, confused. They recognized Dr. Vance. They had seen her photo in the welcome email sent out that Monday, but they were too far away to intervene, and the sight of a police officer made them hesitate. Evelyn Vance knew she was at a precipice. She had spent nearly 30 years working within the system, believing in the chain of command. She knew that if she physically resisted, she could be hurt or killed. But she also knew that yielding to this unlawful order would undermine her authority at the very facility she was supposed to lead. "Officer Thorne," Evelyn said, lowering her voice so that he had to lean in to hear her, a tactic she used in boardroom negotiations. "I am going to reach into my right pocket and pull out my federal identification. It is a hard card with a holographic chip. It identifies me as a member of the Senior Executive Service. That is the civilian equivalent of a general. If you look at it, this ends." "I said, keep your hands away from your pockets." Thorne snapped his hand, tightening on his baton. "I don't want to see your library card. I don't want to see your fake badge you bought online. I want you to leave." "I am not leaving," Evelyn said. Thorne's face reddened. "You need to wait outside. Get off the concrete, get on the public sidewalk, and wait there until I figure out what to do with you. You are not allowed on this site." "I am the site director," Evelyn repeated, emphasizing every syllable. "I am not waiting outside my own building." "That's it," Thorne said. "Turn around." "I am under no obligation to—" "Turn around now." Thorne grabbed Evelyn's left arm. The contact was shocking. Evelyn had not been manhandled since she was a child on the playground. To be grabbed by a municipal police officer while standing on federal ground was a violation so profound it took her breath away for a second. But she recovered instantly. "Officer, you are making a career-ending mistake," she said, not pulling away but not complying. "I am ordering you to release me." "And I'm arresting you for trespassing and failure to comply," Thorne grunted. He twisted her arm behind her back with excessive force. Evelyn winced as her shoulder joint strained, but she did not scream. She would not give them the satisfaction of a scream. "You are hurting me," she said calmly. "I have a previous rotator cuff injury. You are using excessive force." "Stop resisting, then," Thorne yelled, though she wasn't resisting. He pulled her other arm back. The handcuffs came out cold, heavy steel. He ratcheted them onto her wrists tight. Too tight. Braddock, the security guard, was smiling. He pulled out his phone and snapped a picture. "Got her," he muttered. "Told you she didn't belong." The sight of a 52-year-old woman in a business suit being handcuffed against a chain-link fence shifted the mood of the onlookers. The construction foreman, a burly man named Frank in his late 40s, walked over from across the street. He held his phone up, recording. "Hey, officer!" Frank shouted. She ain't fighting you. Take it easy on her arm. Back up, Thorne yelled over his shoulder. Mind your business or you're next. Thorne spun Evelyn around. Her blazer was rumpled, her hair slightly askew, but her dignity was intact. She looked Thorne dead in the eye. My tablet, she said. It is on the ground. It contains classified federal data. If you leave it there, you are responsible for a security breach. Thorne looked at the tablet lying on the grass where it had fallen during the scuffle. He kicked it toward Braddock. Hold on to that. Evidence. He then grabbed Evelyn by the upper arm and marched her toward his patrol car. The shame of being paraded like a criminal burned, but Evelyn converted that heat into cold, hard memory. She was memorizing everything. The time, the license plate, the look on Braddock's face, the pressure of the cuffs. You're going to sit in the back and think about why you can't follow simple orders, Thorne said, opening the rear door. The back of the cruiser smelled of stale sweat and disinfectant. I am not a child officer, Evelyn said as she was shoved inside. And you are not the law. You are a servant of the law who has lost his way. Thorne slammed the door, silencing her. He walked around to the driver's seat, feeling a rush of power. He had cleaned up the street. He had removed the problem. He picked up his radio. Dispatch 1 female in custody, trespassing, resisting, en route to the precinct. He didn't bother to ask for her name again. He didn't check her pockets for the ID she had begged him to look at. He was so convinced of his own narrative that she was a liar, a trespasser, a nobody that he felt no need to verify. This is the danger of confirmation bias. It blinds us to the cliff edge until we have already stepped off. The drive to the 12th precinct took 15 minutes. Evelyn sat in the back, her wrists throbbing. She closed her eyes and practiced a breathing technique she used before congressional hearings. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4. She needed to be razor sharp when they arrived. Thorne hummed along to the radio, completely oblivious to the radioactive isotope he was transporting in his back seat. He pulled into the sally port of the precinct, parked, and hauled Evelyn out. Last chance to tell me who you really are, Thorne mocked as he walked her through the heavy steel doors into the booking area. Maybe I'll go easy on the charges if you admit you were lying. Evelyn said nothing. She saved her words for someone who could read. They walked up to the booking desk. The desk sergeant was a man named Miller, a 58-year-old veteran who was 3 months away from retirement. Miller had seen everything. He had seen good cops, bad cops, and stupid cops. He knew Thorne fell into the latter category. Miller looked up from his computer and saw Evelyn. He saw the suit. He saw the shoes Ferragamos. He noted his wife had a pair. He saw the handcuffs. And he saw the look on her face, which wasn't fear. It was the look of a predator waiting for the cage to open. What do we have, Thorne? Miller asked, his voice weary. Trespassing at the Apex hub, Thorne said, tossing the keys on the counter. Refused to leave, refused to ID, resisted arrest. Miller looked at Evelyn. Ma'am, is this true? Sergeant, Evelyn said, her voice clear and authoritative. My name is Dr. Evelyn Vance. I am the Federal Site Director for the Apex Logistics Hub. My credentials are in my right blazer pocket. Officer Thorne refused to examine them. I would like you to remove these handcuffs and examine them now. The room went very quiet. The other officers in the booking area stopped talking. Sergeant Miller looked at Thorne. Thorne rolled his eyes. She's been saying that for 20 minutes. It's a delusion. Miller stood up. He walked around the desk. Thorne, give me the key. Sarge, she's... Give me the key. Thorne handed it over. Miller unlocked the cuffs. Evelyn rubbed her wrists, revealing deep red indentations. May I? Evelyn asked, gesturing to her pocket. Miller nodded. Slowly. Evelyn reached in and pulled out a black leather wallet. She flipped it open. Inside was the undeniable heavy card of a high-ranking federal official. The holographic seal of the United States shimmered under the fluorescent lights. Below it was a gold badge, not a store-bought toy, but the heavy, serialized badge of the Federal Senior Executive Service. Miller took the wallet. He looked at the ID. He looked at the expiration date. He looked at the security clearance level top secret/SCI. Miller felt the blood drain from his face. He looked at Thorne, his eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and pity. "Thorne," Miller whispered, "do you know what this is?" "It's fake, Sarge. Look at it. She printed it." "Shut up!" Miller roared, slamming his hand on the counter. "It's not fake. This is a PIV card with a microchip. This is a federal badge. You arrested the director of the site you were called to protect." Thorne froze. The certainty that had armored him for the last hour began to crack. She was outside. The guard said." "The guard," Miller scoffed. "You let a rent-a-cop tell you to arrest a federal executive." Evelyn stepped forward. "Sergeant, I need a phone. I need to call the Federal Protective Service and the city attorney, and I need this officer's badge number recorded in the log immediately." The next 20 minutes were a blur of panicked activity for the precinct and a slow, deliberate dismantling of Officer Thorne's life. The watch commander. Captain Reynolds stormed down from his office. He was a man who hated lawsuits, and he could smell a multi-million-dollar one brewing in his lobby. Reynolds walked straight to Evelyn. "Dr. Vance, I am Captain Reynolds. On behalf of the department, I am horrified. We are going to process your release immediately. We will drive you back to your vehicle or anywhere you need to go." "I am not going anywhere until I file a formal complaint," Evelyn said, standing by the desk, rubbing her bruised wrist. "And I want that officer disarmed. I do not feel safe with him in the room." Reynolds turned to Thorne. Thorne was standing in the corner looking pale. The reality of what he had done, the arrogance, the refusal to listen, the sheer stupidity of it was crashing down on him. "Thorne," Reynolds said, his voice low and dangerous. "Badge and gun. Now." "Captain, I was following protocol," Thorne stammered. "She wouldn't listen." "She is a federal director," Reynolds shouted. "You don't arrest people because they hurt your feelings. You verify, you investigate. Give me the badge." Thorne unclipped his badge. He unbuckled his gun belt. The sound of the heavy equipment hitting the desk was the sound of his career ending. He was stripped of his authority in front of the very woman he had tried to humiliate. Evelyn watched him. She didn't smile. There was no joy in this. "Officer Thorne," she said, "you demanded I wait outside. You demanded I submit. You assumed that because of how I look, I could not possibly be who I said I was. You had every opportunity to check. You chose not to. That was a choice. And now you will live with the consequences of that choice." Thorne couldn't meet her eyes. He looked at the floor. He was escorted out of the room by 2 other officers placed on immediate administrative leave pending an investigation that everyone knew would result in termination. Evelyn retrieved her credentials. "Captain, I will be contacting my legal counsel, and I expect the body camera footage to be preserved, all of it." "It will be, ma'am," Reynolds said, defeated. The fallout was swift, brutal, and public. The video from the construction workers hit the internet before Evelyn even left the precinct. The image of the federal site director in handcuffs standing tall while Officer Thorne shoved her became an instant symbol of systemic failure. The lawsuit filed by Dr. Evelyn Vance against the city and the private security firm was unassailable. It alleged false arrest, excessive force, civil rights violations, and negligence. The city attorney didn't even try to fight it. They knew that putting Thorne on a witness stand would be a disaster. They settled for $6.4 million. The security firm, terrified of losing their federal contract, settled for an undisclosed amount, likely in the 7 figures. Kyle Braddock, the security guard who started it all, was fired before the sun set on that Tuesday. He was blacklisted from the security industry. The last reports heard of him, he was working in a warehouse far away from any position of authority. Derek Thorne was terminated following the internal affairs investigation. The review board found that his refusal to verify credentials constituted gross negligence and bias-based policing. He was decertified, meaning he could never work as a police officer in the state again. At 34, he had to start over forever, known as the cop who arrested the boss. Dr. Vance donated a portion of her settlement to a legal defense fund for those who couldn't afford to fight back. She remained the site director of the Apex Hub. Every morning when she walked through those gates, the new security guards stood up straight, checked her ID with respect, and saluted. Not because they were afraid of being sued, but because she had taught them exactly what dignity looks like. This story isn't just about a bad cop or a settlement check. It's about the dangerous assumption that authority is visual, that it looks like a uniform or a certain skin color or a loud voice. Officer Thorne and Guard Braddock looked at a woman of color and saw a subject to be controlled, not a leader to be respected. They assumed that their power was absolute and hers was non-existent. But power doesn't come from a badge or a loud voice. True power comes from competence, from knowing who you are, and from holding your ground when the world tries to move you. Dr. Vance didn't scream, she didn't fight, she didn't lower herself. She waited. And when the truth came out, it hit harder than any baton. We have to ask ourselves how many people don't have a federal badge in their pocket. How many people are told to wait outside and have no way to prove they belong inside? What do you think? Should officers be personally liable for settlements when they ignore clear evidence? Or is this just the cost of doing business? Leave a comment below. I read every single one. And if you believe in accountability, share this story. Let's make sure everyone knows that respect isn't a request, it's a requirement. Until next time, take care of each other.